Good morning. My name is Jun-Hyung, and I am the head of overseas business at KDB Infrastructure Investments Asset Management. This is my great honor to serve as a moderator in this Marine Money Forum with such a distinguished panelists. Today's session's topic is the opportunities for Korean shipping and shipbuilding in a changing world. This is really hot topic, and we heard a lot from presentations in the morning. After the inauguration of President Donald Trump, the tariff war and subsequent trade disputes and geopolitical risks, all of these are affecting every sector of our industry, and this is very wide topic. But today, in this session, we will be mainly focused on the opportunities and the impacts of these factors on shipbuilding and shipping industry in Korea. We have 3 panelists today, and I would like to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. Good morning. My name is Kyun, and I am working for the Korea Shipowners Association. So this association is on behalf of Korean shipping companies. So we have deep consultations with the Korean government on policy making and various guidance for shipping industry. And in my company, I am mainly working on the legislation and all the other public relations issues. My name is Jinho, and I am working for Korean Register. So Korean Register is one of classification societies in Korea. And classification society, as you know, is an organization to conduct investigation or inspection so that everything is very secure and safe. And so we are working on the IMO issues and IX issues and all those safety or material issues. So in these classification societies, I am well positioned to have a holistic view of the market trend. My name is Donghae Lee, and I am working for the BFC, and I am working in the marine finance team. Today in BFC, where I am committed to researches and all the other policy issues so that Busan can be developed into one of the financial hub. Before I worked for KDB in 2009 and in 2010, I met Kevin, and I asked Kevin to host this Marine Money Forum in Busan because our first forum was organized in Seoul. So at that time, I talked with Jim Lawrence, the late Jim Lawrence, who passed away this year. And I met Kevin and Jim Lawrence in New York at that time, and we discussed having this Marine Money Korea Forum in Busan. And next year, we are going to celebrate the 10th anniversary of this Marine Money Korea Forum, and I am looking forward to that. And last night, we had all these speakers cocktail party invitation. We discussed it on the 63rd floor of BFC building, and that was a great success. So we did it again, and we had nice photo zones, and also we had a great participation and attendance today. And I can see that Busan is really developing, and I would like to specifically remark on the contribution of Marine Money Korea, Marine Money Asia to making Busan one of the big port city and big financial hub. And this is really hot topic. And yesterday there was an announcement about MASCA related projects. From the early this year, there have been many negotiations and many news. The UK, Japan, and other EU already completed their trade agreements in July and August, but our negotiation with the US has been prolonged, and lastly, dramatically, the bilateral trade agreement was completed. And we are really paying attention to MASCA project. This is a huge investment as high as $150 billion in American shipbuilding projects. And Mr. Yu is really expert because you are very closely working with many shipbuilders. So you are expert in these stories. So would you tell us how this MASCA project will be unfolded in the future?
So a reporter yesterday was a question asked this question before he went into the car with the HD Heavy Industry CEO. So we were really curious about this. So we talked to the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and we met with people in the shipbuilding industries, but we didn't get any details. But I'm gonna talk about what we have discussed among the working level officials. So yesterday, the $150 billion investment deal was finalized, especially based on private sector, and I thought it was very fortunate because if this project was to be led by the government, it would have been very firm and without any flexibility. But now with this flexibility, the shipbuilders and the top three shipbuilders and other shipbuilders can work with America in a very creative manner. Much so we might be able to utilize much more investment methods, much more than the government may have envisioned. So there could be some joint investment between the shipbuilders and also there could be some cost sharing or the building sharing. And in particular, the shipbuilding industry, they have to really increase productivity. So there could be some sharing of R&Rs between the US and Korea. So for example, there could be some labor-intensive areas like the block process for like ship-related areas. We can do it in areas where the labor cost is lower. Well, the US has much higher per capita income compared to Korea. So for like equipment supply, I believe that Korea will be in charge. But all the other part, I believe that the US will take the lead. In the case of Philly Shipyard, they already have a lot of expertise in the half-half method. That is, half is done by the large shipbuilders and the other half is done by the SME builders. But the whole project is led by the large-scale builder. So they already have experience in synergizing the two sides. And I believe this method can be utilized for Korea and the US cooperation as well. In the case of US shipyards, just as the Congressional Research Service has published reports, they are just building five ships annually, and they only have about good 80 ships. And that has been brought up to the National Assembly, and that is why the President Trump has even issued the executive order to come up with the government support to address this issue. So the idea is to build 250 strategic merchant vessels based on $28 trillion. But can the US shipbuilders be capable of building all of them? But with MASCA cooperation, I believe that this act will go ahead successfully, and that 250 ships can be focused on LNG and eco-friendly vessels based on the contribution of Korea, so it can be both beneficial to both Korea and the US. But the shipbuilding industry is all about having the high-level manufacturing process, and you need to have a very efficient process. And Korean shipbuilders are good at that. But in order to make this possible, the partners or suppliers have to play an important role. For one project for shipbuilding, there are about 100 suppliers, and it amounts to about 10,000 employees of those suppliers. It means that 100 partners and 10,000 workers are all supporting this one shipbuilding project that creates about 10,000 or 20,000 tons of container ships. And we need to transfer this manufacturing process to the US, but is it going to be viable? About 99% of the people were suspicious about that in the beginning, but with the SHIPS Act and with the US government planning to invest $20 billion as a national security package, well, I believe that the fund will be finalized by about next year because most of the fund is based on the port fees for the vessels coming into the US, and that amounts to about 10 trillion and 20 trillion won in several years. So I believe that the fund can be fully met. But there could be some price differences between the US built vessels and the overseas built vessels, and the package includes the methods to cover the difference. Then it means that if a US company builds vessels in the US, and that could be an incentive. And a lot of the Korean builders are looking forward to this bill and the upcoming consequences. But without the absence of the experts and the suppliers, it will take the US a lot of time to build these ships. China used to take only 4% of the market, but now they have much more, and it took about 20 years for the US to increase their market share. So this means that the US should also take a mid to long-term approach to build the ships, and that could really provide synergetic effect for both Korea and Japan. So that 20 years seems like a long time horizon. But this means that it could be a lot of, order volume for Korea. Thank you for that.
지금 보면은 이제 무역 분쟁
The second question is about the trade disputes ongoing. So there is some changes in export patterns. China is trying to export more to other countries rather than the US. And as Mr. Adam mentioned, that the main lane volume is decreasing, and while non-main lane volume is increasing. And also there are some news about port fee imposition. The US and China impose additional port fees on each other's vessels, and all these complexities can create some issues or some challenges or opportunities. So I would like to ask Mr. Kang to talk about these issues. Well, as you well know, the shipping industry is a service industry, so it's hard to say that it is directly affected by the US imposition or US trade disputes. But probably the port fee can be a big issue on shipping industry. All these were announced or forecast from the early this year, and there were many concerns about this. However, in October, it actually took into effect. Even before the imposition of port fees, Chinese carriers such as COSCO or others, they are going to maintain the trans-Pacific services despite this imposition of port fees, and also they are going to match their freight rates to the competitors. And other global carriers such as Maersk mentioned that they are going to redeploy these Chinese-built vessels to non-US routes. And last week, we actually surveyed into real examples of the impacts of trade, impacts of port fees. And this estimated port fee is around $2.2 billion for global carriers from US government on Chinese vessels or China-linked vessels. And from October 14th, China also started to impose retaliatory port fees on US-flagged ships. And due to this imposition of port fees, 2 U.S. flagged ships entered Busan ports for transshipment rather than Chinese ports, and there are similar news reports as well. So shipping industry is practically being affected by these port fees on Chinese or U.S. vessels. HMM is offering services on these service routes, but it does not own a number of Chinese-built vessels, so it will be less affected by these port fees compared to other global carriers. And yesterday, the bilateral trade agreements between the US and Korea was concluded, and that includes the tariff on automobile exports. And the port fees on automobile exports from Korea was expected quite long ago, so we have made preparation for that, so the impacts can be limited. Due to the tariff issues, the export patterns have changed. And our volume from Korea to North America is expected to decrease. But in the first Trump administration, the tariff was imposed on Canada, Mexico, and other countries, and that would force the expansion of US production further. And the export volume to North America is expected to decrease. And that also would increase the intra-regional volume to India, Southeast Asia, and other countries. Practically, MSC, Maersk, and other global carriers are registering more number of vessels in India. After registering their vessels in India, they want to enhance competitiveness. And OM started a new services between India and China so that they can strengthen their trading routes further. For Korean ship owners and shipping companies, what kind of responses can we make? Where we first need to see what would be going on globally. But definitely, it is very sure that the trading routes to North America will see decreasing volume of cargoes, and the freight competition, price competition in other routes will get stronger. So routes to India, to Middle East Asia, or to Southeast Asia, some alternative routes can be our next solution so that we can make up the loss from North American routes. One of the concerns is that if this ongoing trade war between the US and China gets intensifying in some cases, whereas for now, Korean shipping companies are less damaged from these trade disputes compared to other global carriers. But if this trade war between these two countries gets further, then probably we will get damaged further as well.
Thank you. So I can see that the situation is very complicated, and a lot of the Korean ship owners are, I guess, making a lot of precautionary measures. Next, Mr. Lee, this question goes to you. So with the changes in the trade patterns and the global warming, there are lots of efforts to pursue the Arctic Sea route, and the US and China is competing over developing the Arctic Sea routes. So amidst these geopolitical shifts, what role can Busan Port play? And what role should Busan Port play, and what should Busan Port work more to become a main hub in this Arctic route area? Yes, thank you for giving me this question regarding Arctic routes, and this is a very difficult question indeed. So we have to think about the WTO scheme. So there's like the tariff disputes between the US and China and so forth right now, but the shipping industry is really driven by the free trade based on free trade and the shipping that enable that free trade. But this basic philosophy is really compromised by these mutual tariffs. So as a result, the efficiency of the shipping industry has been going down. So while the shipping volume has gone down, we have to introduce more vessels, which is an irony, and that is why we have come up with the idea of Arctic routes. And I personally think that, well, we have been talking about Arctic routes 10 years or 20 years ago, and we shouldn't just be idle. We have to be more proactive. Busan Port is indeed a hub port, especially for the American lines. This is the hub port where the feeders get together at the last spot. So even though we don't go for the Arctic route, if you think about the American routes or the Alaskan lines, Busan ports will have to take on more roles. So the Busan port will have to become a port that can provide more value-added services. Then it would in itself be a preparation for Arctic route era. So chapter 1, we have to be more prepared for bunkering. We lost out compared to Singapore regarding this area. We are just 1/10 of the capacity compared to Singapore bunkering. But now in chapter 2, we are now moving on to the eco-friendly fuel. So we have to be prepared for bunkering for this green fuels. And in this new port, we are now building an LNG bunkering basis. So we are now moving away from the oil-based, and we have to be fastly prepared for this eco-friendly fuel era. And we have a lot of alternatives for the green fuels. And yesterday, the government focused on SMR during the trade talks. So SMR is another important part where we can put in our technologies and manpowers and expertise in the shipbuilding and shipping sector. So SMR can become our super gap technology. And that in itself can become our asset to prepare for the Arctic routes. And that can also be our task. And we need to make some institutional improvements. So Busan should be a home to shipping companies. And we cannot forcefully bring the shipping companies onto Busan. We have to drive them, motivate them to come to Busan naturally, and that is why we need to have more incentives. And in 2015, the separate tax scheme has been stopped. But we have to restore that. We have to create a special zone within the Busan. And also, we have to be more aggressive regarding the tax lease. And the local currency loan is quite weak in our ship financing. So Korean won-based ship financing has to be more activated. And also, as I said in the networking session, the SME builders, they're suffering from RGs. So even though there's SMEs builders want to build in Korea, or if they want to build overseas, they still have difficulties because of RGs. So we are trying to build new ones. So just like a mutual aid association for the constructors, we hope to build a mutual aid associations for them. So we hope to build a mutual aid associations for the builders in the Southeast Asian region, and this could be quite different in nature compared to other financial institutions and provide its unique strength. So we have to focus on that as well. And according to Norway's report, Busan port is 10th in the world. And we believe that we have to go to 5th in this Manon report. There's also another financial hub listing, and we are 25th in that ranking, and we have to go to top 10. So we have to make a lot of strenuous efforts in this regard. And there needs to be a vice president in charge of maritime in Busan City. we can really focus on city administration based on maritime issues. Thank you. Thank you for that.
지금 뭐 시간
Thank you. I think almost the time's up because it really is hot topic. So I want to make a question to Mr. Yu. So you talked about the commercial ships and commercial shipping, and in yesterday's announcement, there were important media reports about the nuclear power propelled submarine construction from last year to this year, that there have been several MRO contracts, and I think it had something to do with MASCA projects. So would you illustrate a little bit about these projects? Where this is my personal opinion, I should say, when it comes to the naval ship construction, the required technologies are somewhat connected to technologies necessary for the construction of commercial ships. So to make a construction technology more sophisticated for naval ships, you definitely need to have sophisticated technologies for commercial ship. There is the act in the U.S., Barnes-Tollefson Act, and it is pending in the U.S. Congress. But once it is passed, then the allied shipyards in Korea or Japan can build U.S. naval ships. So probably MASCA-related projects can be one of the ways to show that Korea has excellent capabilities to build commercial ships, and probably the technologies and know-hows can be transferred to building U.S. naval ships. And some media reports mentioned that our MRO contract can be worth as high as like 2 trillion Korean won or something, but in practice, we have secured only 5 MROs so far. And also for other types of contracts, it is really highly competitive market with shipyards in Singapore or other countries. So through MRO or through MASCA-related projects, rather than directly tapping on the construction of U.S. naval ships, then probably we need to find some role and responsibility sharing between U.S. and Korean shipyards through these MASCA projects. Thank you very much. I think that our insights and opinions from our panelists would be a big help to our audience. With this, I would like to wrap up the panel discussion. Thank you.